I stand in the gleaming conference room of Solvanta Labs, the $4 billion tech empire I built from nothing 12 years ago alongside my business partner, Jack Morrison. Today, Jack just announced his 25-year-old son, James, will become the new Chief Technology Officer while I'll transition to a supportive role. As employees file out awkwardly, Jack approaches with his trademark smile. "Ready to train James tomorrow morning?" he asks cheerfully. I meet his eyes and respond, "No, I'm here to collect what's rightfully mine." The fluorescent lights buzz overhead as I stare at Jack's retreating figure, my mind racing back to where this all began. 12 years ago, Jack Morrison and I were two broke 20-somethings sharing a cramped garage apartment in Bellevue, Washington. While he handled the business side with his natural charm and salesmanship, I spent countless sleepless nights coding the revolutionary AI-powered logistics software that would eventually become Solvanta Labs. Those early days tested every limit of human endurance. I remember surviving on 99-cent ramen noodles for weeks, maxing out 3 different credit cards just to keep our servers running. Jack would pace the concrete floor, gesticulating wildly as he practiced his pitches to potential investors, while I hunched over my laptop, debugging algorithms that would transform how companies managed their supply chains. The breakthrough came during our 8th month of operation when we landed Meridian Shipping as our first major client. That $200,000 contract felt like winning the lottery. I can still picture Jack dancing around our makeshift office, whooping with joy, while I quietly fixed the last critical bug that had been haunting our system for weeks. From there, growth exploded beyond our wildest dreams. We moved from our garage to a small office downtown, then to a mid-rise building, and finally to our current 30-story headquarters overlooking Elliott Bay. Our team expanded from just the 2 of us to over 200 brilliant engineers, designers, and business professionals. The technology I created from scratch now powers logistics operations for 3 million daily users across 42 major corporations worldwide. Just 3 months ago, we completed our Series D funding round, officially valuing Solvanta at $4 billion. The venture capital firms lined up to invest in what they called the most innovative logistics platform of the decade. Jack gave interviews to TechCrunch and Forbes, always making sure to mention me as his brilliant technical co-founder, though I noticed he spent more time discussing his own visionary leadership than my actual innovations. But something felt different in those interviews. Jack started using phrases like our collaborative vision and shared technical expertise, instead of clearly crediting my individual contributions. When reporters asked specific technical questions, he would deflect with business terminology or promise to follow up with detailed specifications later. Now, walking back to my office after today's devastating announcement, I decide to investigate what's been nagging at me for months. I access our company's intellectual property database, expecting to review our standard patent portfolios. What I discover makes my blood turn ice cold. 17 new patent applications filed in the past 6 months. Every single one lists Jack Morrison as the primary inventor, with his son James listed as co-inventor. My name appears nowhere on documents covering algorithms I personally developed, coding architectures I designed from the ground up, and system innovations that represent years of my life's work. My hands shake as I scroll through application after application. The core machine learning algorithm that processes delivery route optimization filed under Jack's name 3 weeks ago. The predictive analytics framework that forecasts supply chain disruptions credited to Jack and James just last month. Even the fundamental database structure that underlies our entire platform refiled as if Jack conceived it himself. I dig deeper into our internal email system using my administrative access to search for communications between Jack and our legal team. What I find confirms my worst fears. Dozens of messages discussing ownership restructuring, founder transition plans, and intellectual property consolidation dating back 6 months. One email from our corporate attorney makes my stomach lurch. Per your instructions, we've completed the refiling process for the 17 core patents. Mr. Morrison and J. Morrison are now listed as primary inventors. Ms. Beatriz Hernandez has been removed from all documentation. The transition should be complete before the planned leadership announcement. Another message from Jack to our head of legal sends chills down my spine. Excellent work on the patent restructuring. This timing perfectly coincides with James' graduation from Wharton. Everything is falling into place for our succession plan. Succession plan. The phrase echoes in my head as I realize this betrayal has been meticulously planned for months, probably from the moment Jack enrolled his son in business school. While I poured my heart and soul into building our technology, believing we were equal partners working toward a shared vision, Jack was systematically erasing my contributions and positioning his unqualified son to inherit what I created. I lean back in my chair, staring at the Seattle skyline through my office windows. The city lights blur as tears well up in my eyes, not from sadness, but from pure rage. 12 years of 18-hour days of sacrificing relationships and personal dreams, of building something extraordinary from nothing, and Jack thinks he can simply delete me from the story. But he made one critical mistake. He assumed I would accept this quietly, that I would fade into the background like some grateful employee receiving a generous severance package. Jack Morrison has no idea who he's really dealing with. The same determination and brilliance that built this company will be exactly what brings his house of cards crashing down. Monday morning arrives with the kind of drizzling Seattle rain that makes everything feel gray and ominous. I walk into our headquarters at 7:30, 90 minutes earlier than usual, hoping to collect my thoughts before the chaos begins. Instead, I discover J. Morrison has already arrived and is standing in what used to be my executive conference room directing maintenance staff to install a massive mahogany desk. "Excuse me," I interrupt, watching two men struggle to maneuver the furniture through the doorway. "This is the strategic planning room for my development team." James turns around with a smile that's clearly been perfected through years of private school networking events. He's wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably costs more than most of our junior developers make in a month, with perfectly styled sandy blonde hair and the kind of confident posture that screams inherited privilege. "Actually, Beatriz, Dad, and I discussed this over the weekend. Since I'll be overseeing all technical operations, it makes sense for me to have a proper executive workspace. Don't worry, your team can use the collaborative spaces on the 14th floor. The collaborative spaces. Those are open concept areas with folding chairs and cheap tables designed for short brainstorming sessions, not serious engineering work." I bite my tongue, knowing that arguing will only make me look petty, and head to my actual office to prepare for what's sure to be an interesting day. At 9 o'clock sharp, James calls his first official meeting with my former development team. I'm not invited, of course, but Sarah Chen, my lead developer and closest ally in the company, fills me in during lunch. "It was a complete disaster," she whispers, glancing around the cafeteria to make sure we're not overheard. He spent 40 minutes presenting what he called a revolutionary improvement plan that would essentially break our entire system architecture. According to Sarah, James' brilliant innovations included replacing our custom-built machine learning algorithms with industry-standard solutions from Microsoft Azure, migrating our real-time processing system to a batch-based approach that would introduce 12-hour delays, and implementing blockchain technology for what he called enhanced security and transparency. "The blockchain thing was particularly painful," Sarah continues. "He kept saying we needed to leverage distributed ledger technology to optimize our data throughput. When Marcus asked how blockchain would improve our current sub-second response times, James just said we needed to think outside traditional paradigms and embrace disruptive innovation. Marcus Rodriguez. Our head of infrastructure apparently tried to explain why James' suggestions would actually slow down our system by a factor of 10,000. James responded by accusing the team of being resistant to change and trapped in legacy thinking patterns. The situation deteriorates rapidly over the following days. During Wednesday's client presentation to Apex Logistics, James confidently describes features that don't exist in our platform, promising capabilities that would take years to develop. When the clients ask technical questions about implementation timelines, he deflects with corporate buzzwords and assures them that his agile development methodologies will accelerate delivery. Thursday brings an even more alarming incident. While reviewing our system documentation, James notices what he assumes are redundant backup files cluttering our main database. Without consulting anyone, he decides to demonstrate his technical prowess by deleting what he considers unnecessary data storage. Unfortunately, those redundant files are critical transaction logs that maintain system integrity across our entire platform. Within minutes of James' optimization attempt, alarms start blaring throughout our data center. I'm in my office reviewing code when Sarah bursts through my door, her face pale with panic. Beatriz, the entire platform is down. Every client, every system, everything is offline. We rush to the server room where chaos reigns supreme. Error messages flash across dozens of monitors indicating cascading failures throughout our network. 3 million daily users across 42 major corporations are suddenly unable to access the logistics platform that manages their critical operations. Marcus is frantically typing commands trying to restore system functionality while James stands nearby looking confused and defensive. I was just removing unnecessary files, he insists. There's no way that could have caused this level of disruption. Those weren't unnecessary files, Marcus explains through gritted teeth. Those were transaction logs maintaining referential integrity across our entire database cluster. Deleting them is like removing the foundation from under a building. For 6 agonizing hours, our entire technical team works to restore functionality. The financial impact is devastating. Emergency server costs to reroute traffic and rebuild lost data total $400,000. Client compensation for service interruptions will likely reach $2.3 million. And that doesn't include the potential lawsuits from companies whose operations were completely halted during our outage. Jack arrives at the office around noon after the crisis is well underway. Instead of acknowledging his son's catastrophic mistake, he instructs our communications team to blame the outage on routine maintenance and unexpected server load. When angry clients call demanding explanations, Jack personally assures them that the incident was an isolated anomaly caused by unprecedented growth in platform usage. The most infuriating part is watching Jack transform his son's incompetence into a learning opportunity. Every great leader faces challenges early in their tenure, he tells the assembled staff. What matters is how we respond and grow from these experiences. But the real crisis comes Friday afternoon when Harrison Blake, CEO of Meridian Shipping, calls Jack directly. Their conversation, audible through Jack's open office door, makes my blood boil. Jack, what the hell happened to your system? We had 300 trucks sitting idle for 6 hours because your platform crashed. This cost us over $2 million in delayed deliveries and customer compensation. Harrison, I understand your frustration completely, Jack responds in his smoothest, negotiating voice. But I want to assure you that these growing pains are temporary. We're transitioning to new leadership with fresh perspectives and innovative approaches. My son James is implementing next-generation development strategies that will prevent issues like this in the future. Fresh perspectives. Innovative approaches. Next-generation strategies. all euphemisms for incompetence and nepotism dressed up in corporate speak. That evening, as I sit in my office reviewing incident reports, I overhear Jack on a conference call with our other major clients. He's spinning an elaborate narrative about how James is the true technical genius behind Solvanta's innovations, describing him as a visionary leader who understands both the business and engineering sides of our platform. The lies flow so smoothly from Jack's mouth that I almost admire his shamelessness. He tells client after client that James has been instrumental in developing our core algorithms and represents the next generation of technical leadership in the logistics industry. As I listen to Jack systematically rewrite history, erasing my contributions while elevating his incompetent son, I realize this is just the beginning. If Jack is willing to lie this brazenly about James' qualifications, there's no limit to how far he'll go to secure his family's control over the company I built. The foundation I spent 12 years constructing is crumbling, but not from natural causes. Jack Morrison is deliberately demolishing it brick by brick to make room for his own dynasty. The question is whether I'll stand by and watch my life's work get destroyed or fight back with everything I have. The emergency board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, ostensibly to address the system failure and discuss damage control strategies. I arrive 30 minutes early, hoping to present my side of the story before Jack can spin the narrative in his favor. Instead, I discover he's been here since 6, already meeting privately with key board members in the executive lounge. Through the glass walls, I can see Jack gesticulating animatedly, his laptop open to what appears to be a detailed presentation. Board members nod seriously as he speaks, occasionally asking questions that prompt lengthy explanations. Whatever story he's telling, it's clearly well-rehearsed and persuasive. The boardroom itself feels different today. The usual collaborative atmosphere has been replaced by something formal and judicial. 8 board members sit around the polished conference table, including 3 representatives from venture capital firms that Jack recruited during our recent funding rounds. These investors have significant leverage, controlling 47% of company shares between them. Jack enters with James at his side, both wearing matching navy blue suits that project confidence and unity. James carries a leather portfolio and expensive fountain pen props that suggest executive competence despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. They take seats at the head of the table, positioning themselves as the established leadership team.
Thank you all for accommodating this urgent meeting.
Jack begins, his voice carrying the grave tone of someone addressing a serious crisis. Recent events have highlighted some fundamental challenges with our current organizational structure that require immediate attention. He clicks to his first slide, Leadership Transition Ensuring Sustainable Growth. The presentation is masterfully crafted, filled with corporate buzzwords and strategic frameworks that sound impressive to investors who don't understand our technical operations. Over the past 6 months, I've observed concerning patterns of resistance to innovation within our technical leadership. Jack continues, his eyes briefly meeting mine before moving on. While we all appreciate the contributions that brought us to this point, it's become clear that scaling to the next level requires fresh thinking and collaborative approaches. Fresh thinking. He's talking about me without using my name, painting my 12 years of successful leadership as an obstacle to progress. I feel my jaw clench as he continues building his case. The recent system outage, while regrettable, has revealed deeper issues with knowledge hoarding and reluctance to embrace modern development methodologies. When leadership operates in silos, refusing to share critical system information or collaborate on improvements, the entire organization suffers. Knowledge hoarding. The accusation is so absurd it takes my breath away. I've trained dozens of engineers, documented every system extensively, and maintained transparent development processes from day one. But Jack is framing my expertise as selfishness, my careful system design as secretive gatekeeping. His next slide shows a fabricated timeline of escalating incidents that supposedly demonstrate my declining performance and increasing volatility. He's taken routine technical decisions and disagreements, removing all context to make them appear erratic and unreasonable. For example, 3 weeks ago, Beatriz unilaterally rejected a proposed database optimization that could have prevented last week's outage. When questioned about her decision, she became defensive and accused the proposing team member of not understanding our system architecture. That team member was James. His proposal would have deleted critical backup protocols. I didn't become defensive. I provided detailed technical explanations for why his suggestion was dangerous. But Jack presents my professionalism as emotional instability, my technical expertise as arrogance. The character assassination continues for 20 minutes. Jack has somehow obtained records of every disagreement I've had with any employee over the past year, stripped of context and presented as evidence of my inability to work collaboratively. Private conversations where I expressed concerns about James' qualifications are portrayed as insubordination and personal attacks. Then comes the most devastating accusation. I have reason to believe that last week's system failure was not accidental. Email evidence suggests that Beatriz deliberately withheld critical information that could have prevented the outage, possibly as a way to undermine James' transition into leadership. The room falls silent as Jack displays fabricated email timestamps and misleading message excerpts. He's taken my legitimate concerns about James' technical knowledge and twisted them into evidence of sabotage. Board members exchange worried glances, clearly troubled by these serious allegations. This kind of destructive behavior cannot continue if we want to maintain investor confidence and client relationships, Jack concludes. Our fiduciary responsibility requires us to prioritize organizational stability over personal loyalties or past contributions. When Jack finishes his presentation, James stands to deliver his own polished speech. Someone has clearly invested heavily in executive coaching for him. His delivery is smooth and confident, filled with strategic frameworks and industry buzzwords that sound impressive to non-technical audiences. I want to thank the board for this opportunity to share my vision for Solvanta's technical future. He begins consulting notes written in what I recognize as Jack's handwriting. Having observed our current systems and processes over the past few weeks, I've identified several opportunities for optimization and modernization. He presents a detailed roadmap for implementing industry best practices and leveraging emerging technologies to enhance scalability. Everything sounds reasonable until you understand the technical implications. His proposals would essentially rebuild our entire platform using inferior technologies, increasing costs while reducing performance. But the board doesn't understand these nuances. They hear confident leadership proposing innovative solutions, exactly what venture capitalists want from their investments. When James describes blockchain integration and artificial intelligence enhancements, investors nod approvingly, impressed by his apparent technological sophistication. I believe strongly in collaborative leadership and knowledge sharing. James continues, clearly coached on addressing Jack's earlier criticisms. My approach emphasizes transparency, team empowerment, and inclusive decision-making processes that leverage diverse perspectives across our organization. The irony is suffocating. He's promising collaboration while participating in a coup designed to eliminate the person who built the technology he's discussing. Finally, I'm given an opportunity to respond. Standing before the board, I attempt to present evidence of my contributions and James' incompetence. I show patent applications, system architecture diagrams, and performance metrics demonstrating the value of my work. But Jack has poisoned the well too effectively. When I explain technical concepts, board members look confused and impatient. When I point out flaws in James' proposals, they see exactly what Jack warned them about: defensiveness and resistance to innovation. My detailed documentation of the system failure, proving that James' actions directly caused the outage, is dismissed as finger-pointing and failure to take responsibility for leadership oversight. My years of successful performance are characterized as past achievements that don't address current challenges. The most crushing moment comes when Patricia Williams, a board member I've known for 5 years, looks at me with disappointment and says, "Beatriz, we all appreciate what you've built here, but leadership requires adaptability and growth. If you can't support the organization's evolution, perhaps it's time to consider whether this is still the right fit." The vote comes quickly, 5-3, in favor of removing me as Chief Technology Officer. My new title will be Senior Technical Advisor, with no team management responsibilities and no authority over system development. My annual salary drops from $400,000 to $120,000. Most devastating of all, new company structures dilute my ownership from 25% to 8%. Within minutes of the vote, security guards escort me from the executive floor. My access cards are deactivated. My corporate accounts suspended, my parking privileges revoked. Employees watch in stunned silence as I marched past their desks carrying a small box of personal belongings. Jack makes the final announcement with characteristic eloquence. "Effective immediately, James Morrison will serve as our President and Chief Technology Officer with full authority over all technical operations. We're excited about this new chapter in Solvanta's growth story." Sitting in my car in the parking garage, I finally let the emotions overwhelm me. 12 years of my life stolen in a single morning. The technology I created with my own hands, now controlled by someone who doesn't understand how it works. The company I built from nothing, transformed into a monument to nepotism and greed. But beneath the heartbreak and rage, something else begins to emerge: determination. Jack Morrison thinks he's won, but he's made one critical error. He assumes that removing me from the boardroom means removing me from the equation entirely. He has no idea that the real battle is just beginning, and this time I'll be fighting on my own terms. The next 2 weeks blur together in a haze of disbelief and self-doubt. I spend most days in my small Capitol Hill apartment staring at the rain streaking down windows, while my laptop sits unopened on the kitchen table. Friends call repeatedly, but I can't bring myself to explain what happened. How do you tell people that your best friend and business partner systematically destroyed your life while you were too naive to see it coming? The local news covers Solvanta's leadership transition as a positive development, interviewing Jack about his vision for scaling the company. He speaks eloquently about next-generation technical leadership and innovative approaches to logistics optimization, never mentioning that his brilliant new CTO accidentally crashed the entire system during his first week. I stop reading tech blogs and avoid social media entirely. Seeing colleagues congratulate Jack on his strategic succession planning makes me physically ill. The industry narrative has already solidified. Visionary CEO passes the torch to his equally talented son, ensuring continuity and growth for a groundbreaking company. Everything changes on a Thursday evening when I receive an encrypted email from Sarah Chen, sent from her personal account rather than our corporate system. The message contains just a phone number and the words, "Call me tonight. Use a burner phone." 3 hours later, I'm sitting in a 24-hour diner in Fremont, waiting nervously with a prepaid cell phone I bought at a gas station. Sarah arrives looking exhausted and constantly glances around as if expecting to be followed. "I couldn't risk talking at the office," she explains, sliding into the booth across from me. "Jack has been monitoring all internal communications since the board meeting. Anyone who mentions your name or questions the new leadership gets called into HR for attitude adjustment conversations." Sarah reveals that the situation inside Solvanta has deteriorated far beyond what I imagined. 6 senior engineers have already resigned rather than work under James' incompetent leadership. 3 more are actively job hunting, updating their LinkedIn profiles, and reaching out to recruiters. Yesterday, James called a mandatory training session on modern development practices. Sarah continues, her voice dripping with disgust. He spent 2 hours explaining how we need to implement agile methodologies and continuous integration pipelines. Marcus pointed out that we've been using both approaches for the past 4 years. James accused him of being resistant to innovation and suggested maybe he wasn't a good cultural fit for the new Solvanta. Marcus Rodriguez, our head of infrastructure, has apparently become a particular target. His deep understanding of our system architecture threatens James' authority, so he's been gradually excluded from important meetings and critical decisions. Yesterday, James announced that all infrastructure changes must be approved personally by him, despite his obvious lack of technical knowledge. The scariest part is what's happening to our client relationships, Sarah whispers, leaning across the table. We've had 3 more minor outages since you left. Nothing as catastrophic as the first one, but enough to make clients nervous. James keeps promising improvements that would actually make things worse. She pulls out her phone and shows me screenshots of internal messages carefully taken to avoid detection. One shows James proposing to migrate our real-time fraud detection system to a batch processing model that would introduce 6-hour delays. Another suggests replacing our custom machine learning algorithms with off-the-shelf solutions that lack the sophistication to handle our clients' complex requirements. The worst part is that Jack fully supports every terrible idea, Sarah continues. When we try to explain why these changes would be disastrous, he accuses us of undermining his son and threatens our jobs. It's like he genuinely believes James is some kind of technical genius. As I listen to Sarah describe the systematic destruction of everything I built, something shifts inside me. The depression and self-pity begin transforming into something much more powerful, cold, calculating anger. These people have stolen my life's work, but they're also destroying the technology that millions of people depend on daily. That's when I remember something that might change everything. Racing back to my apartment, I boot up my personal laptop and access old code repositories that I maintain outside the corporate network. While reviewing system documentation from our early days, I find what I'm looking for, an administrative backdoor built into the core architecture. During Solvanta's second year, when we were still operating on shoestring budgets with minimal redundancy, I implemented emergency access protocols that would allow system recovery in case of catastrophic failures. The backdoor was designed for absolute emergencies, hidden deep in the authentication system, where only someone with intimate knowledge of our architecture would think to look. More importantly, this feature was never documented in any official system records. Jack focused exclusively on business development and funding in those days, leaving all technical decisions to me. He has no idea this backdoor exists, and I seriously doubt James has the skill to discover it. Testing the access carefully, I confirm that my old emergency credentials still work. Through this hidden pathway, I have complete administrative control over Solvanta's entire platform, user accounts, financial records, system logs, and communication databases. It's like having a master key to every door in a building that the current owners don't know exists. The ethical implications weigh heavily on my mind. Using this access to gather evidence feels like a violation of trust, even though Jack has already betrayed me completely. But as I think about the thousands of employees whose jobs depend on Solvanta's success and the millions of users who rely on our platform, I realize this might be my only chance to prevent a total disaster. My moral wrestling is interrupted by another encrypted message from Sarah. This one contains information that makes my blood run cold. Marcus has discovered evidence of financial irregularities in Jack's expense accounts. We arrange another clandestine meeting, this time at a coffee shop in Georgetown, where Marcus joins us. He looks haggard and stressed, clearly struggling with whether to share what he's learned.
I didn't go looking for this.
He begins glancing around nervously.
But last week, James asked me to help optimize our financial reporting systems. While reviewing transaction logs, I noticed some unusual patterns in executive compensation and consulting fees.
Marcus has discovered that Jack created several shell companies that provide strategic advisory services to Solvanta. These entities, with names like Morrison Strategic Consulting and Future Tech Solutions, have received over $2 million in payments over the past 18 months for services that Marcus can't find any evidence of.
The invoices are all professionally formatted and properly approved through normal procurement channels, Marcus explains. But when I tried to contact these companies to understand what services they provide, the phone numbers go to voicemail boxes that are never answered.
Further investigation revealed that all these consulting companies share the same registered address, a small office building in Bellevue that houses Jack's personal attorney. The pattern suggests systematic embezzlement disguised as legitimate business expenses.
There's more.
Marcus continues, his voice barely above a whisper.
I found cryptocurrency wallet addresses in some of Jack's personal files. Large transactions, hundreds of thousands of dollars with no clear business purpose.
As we discuss these discoveries, I realize that Jack's betrayal goes far beyond nepotism and ego. He's been systematically looting the company while planning to install his son as a puppet leader. The board coup wasn't just about removing me from power, it was about eliminating the one person who might discover his financial crimes. That night, I make a decision that will change everything. Using my backdoor access, I begin systematically documenting every piece of evidence I can find. If Jack Morrison wants to play games, I'll play them better than he ever imagined. But this time, I'll have the truth on my side. The real war is about to begin, and Jack has no idea what's coming for him. Over the next 3 weeks, I become a digital detective, methodically building the most comprehensive case of corporate fraud in Seattle's tech industry history. My days fall into a careful routine, mornings at local coffee shops using public Wi-Fi networks, afternoons at the Seattle Public Library researching legal precedents, evenings in my apartment, carefully documenting everything through my backdoor access. The first breakthrough comes when I discover Jack's email correspondence with Pinnacle Patent Services, the law firm handling our intellectual property filings. Reading through months of communications, I piece together the systematic theft of my innovations with timestamps and revision histories that prove the chronology of his deception. One email from March 15th makes my hands shake with rage.
Proceed with Phase 2 of the IP restructuring.
Remove Beatriz Hernandez from all remaining patent applications and transfer primary inventor status to Jack Morrison and James Morrison. We need this completed before the board presentation in April. Phase 2. This implies a Phase 1 that I haven't discovered yet, suggesting even more extensive theft than I originally realized. Digging deeper into archived files, I find evidence that Jack began altering patent records over 18 months ago, shortly after James enrolled in business school at Wharton. The documentation reveals breathtaking audacity. Patents covering algorithms I developed during our second year of operation, system architectures I designed during late-night coding sessions in our original garage office. Even optimization techniques I created just 6 months ago have all been retroactively assigned to Jack and his son. But intellectual property theft is only the beginning. Marcus's suspicions about financial irregularities lead me to examine expense reports and procurement records with forensic precision. What I discover constitutes a masterclass in corporate embezzlement. The shell companies Marcus identified are just the visible tip of a much larger iceberg.
Jack has created an entire ecosystem of fake vendors and consulting firms, all designed to funnel Solvanta's profits into his personal accounts. Morrison Strategic Consulting charged us $400,000 for market analysis and competitive intelligence that consists of publicly available industry reports copied from free sources. Future Tech Solutions billed us $600,000 for advanced development consultations that supposedly informed our technical roadmap. Their deliverables are generic PowerPoint presentations filled with buzzwords and copied directly from Microsoft and Amazon documentation available online. The most brazen theft involves Apex Innovation Partners, which received $800,000 for executive coaching and leadership development services. Investigating this company's registration documents, I discover it's owned entirely by Jack's brother-in-law, a high school football coach from Oregon with no business experience whatsoever. Every fraudulent transaction is carefully structured to avoid triggering automatic auditing thresholds. Individual invoices stay under $50,000. Payments are spread across multiple quarters, and supporting documentation appears legitimate to casual inspection. Only someone with deep access to financial records and significant time for investigation would uncover the pattern. The cryptocurrency discoveries lead to even more disturbing revelations. Jack has been receiving regular payments from Dataflow Corporation, our biggest competitor, in exchange for proprietary technical information about Solvanta's platform development. Email chains between Jack and Dataflow's CEO Nathan Pierce read like a spy novel. They use code names and encrypted messaging apps to coordinate information exchanges. Jack provides algorithm specifications, client lists, and strategic development plans in return for cryptocurrency payments totaling over $300,000. One message from Nathan Pierce chills me to the bone. The logistics optimization specs you provided last month were invaluable. Our development team has already implemented similar approaches, and we're seeing significant performance improvements. The next payment will be transferred to your usual wallet address. My logistics optimization specs. Algorithms I spent months perfecting shared with our primary competitor while I was still employed and trusting Jack completely. The betrayal feels personal in a way that corporate fraud somehow doesn't. But the most shocking discovery comes when I access Jack's calendar and private communications. He's been in active negotiations to sell Solvanta to Tech Global Industries for $8 billion, planning to structure the deal so that he and James receive the majority of proceeds, while other shareholders get diluted payouts. The acquisition strategy is diabolic in its sophistication. Jack has been deliberately sabotaging Solvanta's performance to lower the purchase price, planning to split the difference with Tech Global executives who are secretly working with him to undervalue the company. Internal emails reveal the timeline. The controlled demolition should be complete by Q4. Client departures and system instabilities will justify a lower valuation, probably around $6 billion instead of $8 billion. Nathan has confirmed his board will approve the acquisition at that price point. Controlled demolition. Jack is intentionally destroying the company I built, planning to sell the wreckage to conspirators who will compensate him privately for the reduced purchase price. Every system failure, every client complaint, every employee resignation has been orchestrated to serve his exit strategy. The evidence also reveals James' knowing participation in these crimes. Far from being an innocent beneficiary of his father's nepotism, he's actively involved in providing technical documents to Dataflow and helping coordinate the sabotage efforts. One message from James to his father turns my stomach. Dad, I uploaded the database schema files you requested to the secure server. Nathan's team should have everything they need to replicate our fraud detection algorithms. This is actually pretty exciting, being part of something this big. They're treating the systematic destruction of my life's work like an adventure, a game where winning means stealing billions of dollars from employees and shareholders who trusted them. As I compile hundreds of pages of evidence, I realize I need legal support to navigate what's about to become the largest corporate fraud case in Washington state history. Through careful research, I identify Rebecca Torres, an employment attorney specializing in founder disputes, who successfully prosecuted several high-profile technology executives. Our first meeting takes place in her downtown office, where I present a carefully organized summary of my discoveries. Rebecca listens intently as I explain the intellectual property theft, financial embezzlement, industrial espionage, and acquisition conspiracy. "This is extraordinary," she says, finally reviewing screenshots and documentation on her laptop. "I've handled dozens of founder disputes, but nothing approaching this scale of systematic fraud. You have grounds for both civil and criminal charges that could result in decades of prison time." She also connects me with David Kim, an investigative journalist at TechCrunch, who specializes in exposing corporate corruption in the technology industry. David agrees to investigate the story thoroughly provided I can supply sufficient evidence to meet their publication standards. Working with Rebecca's legal team, we develop a comprehensive strategy for exposing Jack's crimes while protecting my own interests. The plan involves coordinating simultaneous legal, regulatory, and media actions that will overwhelm Jack's ability to manage the crisis. But our timeline accelerates dramatically when David's initial research uncovers additional information. Jack plans to announce the Tech Global acquisition next Monday, just 4 days away. Once that sale closes, recovering stolen assets becomes exponentially more difficult. We have 4 days to bring down an $8 billion corporate conspiracy. As I stare at the evidence spread across my apartment floor, I realize that everything I've learned about strategic planning and problem solving over the past 12 years is about to be tested in the most important battle of my life. Jack Morrison thinks he's checkmated me, but he doesn't understand that I've been playing a completely different game. Tomorrow, we make our move. Friday morning, December 8th, at exactly 6:15, our coordinated assault begins across multiple fronts simultaneously. I sit in Rebecca's law office, surrounded by legal documents and laptop computers, as we execute the most complex takedown operation in Seattle's corporate history. The first strike comes through the legal system. Rebecca files an emergency injunction in King County Superior Court, requesting immediate freezing of Solvanta's assets and a halt to any pending acquisition negotiations. The filing includes over 400 pages of evidence documenting systematic fraud, embezzlement, and securities violations. Simultaneously, David Kim publishes his exposé on TechCrunch with the headline, "The $4 billion theft: How Solvanta's co-founder was erased from her own company." The article includes audio recordings, email screenshots, and financial documents that paint a devastating picture of corporate corruption. Within 30 minutes of publication, the story explodes across social media. Technology executives, venture capitalists, and industry analysts share the article thousands of times, expressing shock and outrage at the scale of Jack's betrayal. Justice for Beatriz begins trending on Twitter as supporters rally around the evidence of my stolen innovations. The Securities and Exchange Commission receives an anonymous package containing detailed financial records documenting Jack's embezzlement and data flow conspiracy. By 8 o'clock, federal investigators are already subpoenaing bank records and cryptocurrency transactions related to the case. But the most satisfying part of our strategy unfolds inside Solvanta's headquarters, where Jack has called an emergency board meeting to announce the Tech Global acquisition. I know about this meeting through my backdoor access to his calendar, which means I can time my technical demonstration for maximum impact. At exactly 9:30, as Jack begins his presentation to board members and Tech Global executives, I activate the most sophisticated corporate sabotage operation in technology history. Using my hidden administrative access, I simultaneously lock out every executive account in the company except my own. Jack's laptop screen goes black mid-sentence, displaying a simple message: System access restricted pending ownership verification. Contact administrator for assistance. The same message appears on James' computer on the main presentation screen and on every device connected to Solvanta's network. Through Sarah's real-time updates via encrypted messaging, I can visualize the chaos unfolding in the boardroom. Jack frantically tries to regain control, attempting password resets and calling the IT support team. Nothing works because I've temporarily suspended all administrative privileges except those connected to my original founder credentials. Tech Global's executives watch in stunned silence as the CEO of a $4 billion technology company proves himself completely incapable of accessing his own systems. When they ask James to resolve the technical issue, he reveals the full extent of his incompetence by suggesting they try turning the computers off and on again. At 10:15, I make my dramatic entrance into the boardroom, accompanied by Rebecca and her legal team. The assembled executives look up in surprise as I walk confidently to the head of the conference table, carrying a laptop bag and wearing the kind of professional attire that commands respect. Good morning. I begin, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I apologize for the technical difficulties you've been experiencing. As the person who actually built Solvanta's technology platform, I thought it might be appropriate for me to explain what's happening today. Jack's face cycles through a range of emotions: confusion, recognition, anger, and finally something approaching panic as he realizes the implications of my presence. James looks completely lost, clearly having no idea how to respond to a situation this complex. I connect my laptop to the main presentation screen and begin displaying evidence with the methodical precision of someone who has spent weeks preparing for this moment. Patent theft documentation appears first, showing timestamp after timestamp, proving that Jack retroactively stole my innovations. For 12 years, I believed Jack Morrison was my partner, I explained to the assembled audience. I trusted him completely while building the technology that powers this company. What I discovered 3 weeks ago is that he's been systematically erasing my contributions while positioning his unqualified son to inherit what I created. The financial fraud evidence comes next. Bank records, cryptocurrency transactions, and shell company documentation that demonstrate millions of dollars in embezzlement. Board members lean forward in their chairs, clearly struggling to process the scale of Jack's deception. But intellectual property theft and embezzlement weren't sufficient for Jack's plans. I continue advancing to the next section of evidence. He's also been selling our proprietary technology to Dataflow Corporation while negotiating to sell Solvanta to Tech Global at an artificially deflated price. The industrial espionage documentation produces audible gasps from several board members. Seeing their own CEO's communications with competitors documenting years of systematic betrayal destroys any remaining trust in Jack's leadership. Tech Global's representatives stand up from the table, clearly recognizing that proceeding with the acquisition would expose them to massive legal liability. Their CEO addresses Jack directly. Mr. Morrison, we obviously cannot move forward with this transaction given these revelations. Our legal team will be reviewing all previous communications to ensure we haven't been inadvertently involved in any fraudulent activities. The final blow comes when I display James' private messages acknowledging his participation in the conspiracy. Reading his own words aloud, describing the theft of my work as exciting and something big, destroys any pretense that he's an innocent victim of his father's schemes. Every algorithm that powers this platform, every innovation that creates value for our clients, every technical breakthrough that justified our $4 billion valuation came from my mind and my work. I conclude, Jack Morrison didn't build this company. He simply took credit for what I created while planning to steal it completely. The boardroom erupts in heated discussions as members confront Jack about the evidence. Patricia Williams, the board member who voted to remove me from leadership, publicly apologizes and calls for an immediate vote to restore my position as CEO and CTO. But Jack isn't finished fighting. He stands up abruptly, pointing an accusatory finger in my direction, while his voice rises to near shouting levels. "This is corporate sabotage. Beatriz is a disgruntled former employee who's fabricating evidence and hacking our systems illegally." His desperation is palpable, but the evidence speaks for itself. When board members demand explanations for specific financial transactions and communications, Jack can only offer weak denials and accusations of conspiracy against him. The situation deteriorates further when Harrison Blake, CEO of Meridian Shipping, enters the boardroom unannounced. He's been following the TechCrunch story and decided to confront Jack personally about years of deception. "Jack, I've just spent the morning reading about how you've been lying to me for years." Harrison announces, his voice carrying the authority of someone who controls $18 million in annual business. "You told me repeatedly that James was the technical genius behind your platform. Now I discover that you stole everything from the woman who actually built it." The public support from our most important client devastates Jack's remaining credibility. When other board members receive similar calls from concerned clients, the momentum becomes irreversible. By noon, the board votes unanimously to remove Jack as CEO and restore my full authority over Solvanta's operations. James is terminated immediately, with security guards escorting both father and son from the building, while employees watch in stunned silence. The final humiliation comes when federal agents arrive with warrants to seize Jack's computers and financial records. The FBI has opened a formal investigation into wire fraud, securities violations, and conspiracy charges that could result in decades of prison time. Standing in the same conference room where my nightmare began just weeks ago, I watched Jack Morrison's empire crumble with the same systematic precision he used to steal my life's work. The difference is that my weapons are truth and evidence, while his were built on lies and betrayal. Justice feels sweet, but the real work of rebuilding and redemption is just beginning. 6 months later, I stand before a packed courthouse in downtown Seattle, watching Jack Morrison accept a plea agreement that will send him to federal prison for 7 years. The man who once commanded boardrooms with charm and confidence now speaks in barely audible whispers, acknowledging guilt on charges of wire fraud, patent fraud, and conspiracy to commit securities violations. The judge orders him to pay $15 million in restitution, representing the stolen funds, plus interest and penalties. His assets are frozen, his reputation destroyed, and his dreams of a family dynasty reduced to newspaper headlines about corporate corruption. James receives a lighter sentence, community service, and ethics training, but he's permanently barred from holding executive positions at any publicly traded company. The legal victory feels satisfying, but the real transformation happens at Solvanta itself. Within days of regaining control, I implement sweeping changes that restore the company's integrity and technical excellence. Sarah Chen returns as my chief operating officer. Marcus Rodriguez becomes head of infrastructure with expanded authority, and we rebuild our engineering team with talented professionals who share our vision for ethical innovation. The most immediate challenge involves restoring client confidence after months of declining performance under James' incompetent leadership. We spend weeks implementing system improvements, fixing security vulnerabilities, and demonstrating the technical competence that made Solvanta successful originally. Harrison Blake becomes our strongest advocate, publicly endorsing our leadership transition and recommending Solvanta to other logistics companies. Working with Beatriz again reminds me why we chose this platform originally, he tells industry publications. She understands both the technical complexities and business requirements in ways that create real value for clients. The financial recovery exceeds all expectations. Freed from Jack's profit-draining schemes and James' destructive technical decisions, Solvanta's platform performance improves dramatically. Client satisfaction scores increase by 37%. System uptime reaches 99.8%, and new feature development accelerates beyond previous benchmarks. Investment firms that initially questioned my leadership capabilities now compete for opportunities to increase their stakes in the company. Our Series E funding round completed 8 months after the coup values Solvanta at $5.2 billion, officially recognizing the growth potential that proper technical leadership enables. The industry recognition validates everything I've fought to preserve. TechCrunch names me Entrepreneur of the Year for successfully exposing corporate fraud while rebuilding a major technology platform. Forbes includes me on their Most Powerful Women in Technology list, highlighting how my experience demonstrates the importance of protecting founder contributions. But personal satisfaction comes from smaller moments that remind me why I built this company originally. When a young engineer approaches me after a team meeting expressing gratitude for creating an environment where technical excellence matters more than corporate politics, I remember my own early experiences working for leaders who valued innovation over ego. My relationship with David Wilson, the software architect I've been dating for 2 years, deepens as I learn to balance professional ambition with personal fulfillment. The crisis taught me that success means nothing without people who genuinely care about your well-being rather than your accomplishments. The most meaningful project becomes the Founder Protection Foundation, which I established to support entrepreneurs facing similar betrayals. We provide legal resources, technical expertise, and financial assistance for founders whose contributions have been stolen or minimized by unethical partners. Our first major case involves a brilliant female engineer in Austin whose male co-founder attempted to erase her contributions while pursuing venture capital funding. Using lessons learned from my own experience, we help her document her innovations, expose the theft, and ultimately regain control of the company she created. What you've built gives hope to everyone who faces these impossible situations, she tells me during a foundation gala celebrating successful cases. Knowing that someone fought back and won makes it possible for the rest of us to believe justice is achievable. The foundation also advocates for systemic changes in how the technology industry protects founder contributions. We work with venture capital firms to implement transparency requirements, lobby for stronger intellectual property protections, and support legislation that prevents the kind of corporate theft Jack perpetrated. Speaking at technology conferences about my experience, I emphasize that the greatest victory wasn't reclaiming my company, but proving that truth and persistence can overcome even sophisticated fraud. When someone tries to steal your life's work, I tell audiences of aspiring entrepreneurs, the most powerful response isn't revenge, but building something even better than what they tried to take. 2 years after the boardroom coup, I receive a letter from an unexpected source. A young woman studying computer science at the University of Washington writes about following my story during her freshman year and deciding to pursue entrepreneurship despite warnings about the challenges facing female founders. Your example showed me that technical competence and ethical leadership can survive even the worst betrayals, she explains. I'm starting my own company now, building machine learning applications for environmental monitoring. When investors or partners question my capabilities, I remember that Beatriz Hernandez rebuilt a $4 billion company after it was stolen from her. Standing in the same conference room where my nightmare began, now leading a transformed organization that reflects my values and vision. I understand that the greatest victory isn't personal vindication, but the example it creates for others.
Every patent filed correctly, every employee treated fairly, every innovation shared transparently sends a message that integrity and competence ultimately prevail. Jack Morrison tried to write me out of my own story, but he succeeded only in making that story more powerful. The company he attempted to steal is now stronger, more valuable, and more ethical than it was before his betrayal. The technology he tried to claim has evolved beyond his understanding, serving millions of users with reliability and innovation he could never have achieved. The foundation he tried to destroy became the bedrock for something greater, a model of principled leadership that proves technical excellence and moral courage can coexist successfully in competitive industries. When young entrepreneurs ask me about overcoming seemingly impossible challenges, I point them toward the evidence surrounding us. Solvanta Labs stands as proof that building something meaningful requires more than brilliant technology or clever business strategies. It demands the integrity to do what's right, even when it's difficult, the persistence to fight for truth, even when you're alone, and the wisdom to transform betrayal into an opportunity for redemption. The greatest lesson Jack Morrison taught me, though he never intended it, is that you can steal someone's work, manipulate their relationships, and damage their reputation, but you cannot steal their knowledge, their character, or their determination to rebuild something better. Those qualities belong to the individual, and no amount of fraud or deception can take them away. Today, as I approve the final designs for our next-generation artificial intelligence platform, I realize that everything I've built since the coup exceeds what existed before Jack's betrayal. The struggle made me stronger, more careful, and more committed to the principles that created lasting value originally. That's the power of choosing justice over revenge, construction over destruction, and truth over convenient deception. When you build with integrity, what you create lasts longer and reaches higher than anything built on stolen foundations. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to take credit for your work or contributions? What did you do to stand up for yourself and ensure your efforts were recognized? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below about overcoming workplace betrayal or fighting for what's rightfully yours. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to support more content about entrepreneurial courage and workplace justice. Subscribe to the channel for weekly stories about people who fought back against unfairness and won. And please share this video with anyone who might be facing similar challenges, because sometimes knowing that others have overcome these situations gives us the strength to fight for ourselves. Thank you for joining me today and listening to this journey from betrayal to redemption. Remember that your contributions matter, your innovations deserve protection, and your integrity is worth fighting for, no matter how powerful the opposition seems. Until next time, keep building, keep innovating, and never let anyone convince you that what you created belongs to someone else.